there was a bunch of tests done today that the NHL did on these players because, the whole return to play thing, they started phase 2. Every player has to get tested now. There was 11 players that do have it, but not one of them besides Auston Matthews' name was said, and that is completely unacceptable. Let's just cut to the chase to start things off. First of all, I got a guest, Jason Lee from Oakville, Ontario. First off, Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, and how are you?
I'm doing good, just hanging in there throughout this whole COVID thing. But yeah, good to hear that you're doing well, and thanks for coming on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, buddy. So yeah, Unlimited episode number 4. We're just gonna start this thing off the top. There was some big news that broke today. Auston Matthews, he might have COVID-19. We aren't 100% sure if that is the truth yet, but from what we're hearing, there's a good chance that he does have it. There was a report that came out today by Steve Simmons of the Toronto Star saying that he did indeed test positive for the coronavirus. So obviously, first thoughts, Auston Matthews is the MVP of the Toronto Maple Leafs, arguably one of the best players in the league, coming from our hometown. So, it was shocking news to everyone. So Jason, I'll get your thoughts right away. What were your thoughts when you heard the news? How did you find out about it? And what was your first initial reaction to it?
Yeah, so I got the news on Bleacher Report on my phone. I looked at it, and the title just said Maple Leaf star tests positive for COVID-19. So immediately, obviously, my mind goes to Auston Matthews. And, I didn't know whether he was in Toronto or whether in Arizona. But originally, when I heard the news, obviously, my first instinct is to know whether it was real or fake. Assuming that it's real, obviously, it's a big thing. We're seeing a lot of really famous athletes getting tested positive for this virus. We've seen Kevin Durant, and we've seen Ezekiel Elliott, and now we have Auston Matthews. So, obviously we know that this virus, is pretty deadly. And, judging by all the facts that we have so far, we don't really know too much, but we know that, anything can really happen. So, obviously we hope that Auston is doing well, and before the season starts, he'll be able to come over here in Toronto.
Yeah, I think, the main thing right now is that we do have to assume that Matthews has it, and we have to send him, our best wishes. And yeah, my first reaction, being a really big Toronto Maple Leafs fan was, I was speechless, to be honest with you.
So was I.
Like I said, one of the best players in the game, one of the most important players on our team. And I know that, it's for the coronavirus, right? Like the people who are younger, they're not as susceptible to it. And, there's a better chance of them surviving from it or overcoming the virus. But still, like, just the thought of what could happen, like you're thinking the worst. And, that kind of hit me, kind of was in my feels a little bit, just because, he's one of the first people I've actually found out, I guess, that has had it, and it's affected me in some way. And then there's that whole other aspect to it. Like, is this thing real? Which we found out a little bit later on during the day. We're recording this Friday night. There's news that came out, I think, about an hour ago about, this whole Steve Simmons thing. He wasn't supposed to say this. The NHL has an agreement with the players, and the league says that they should not be releasing any information on whether a player is tested positive for this virus. And what Simmons did goes completely against that. So it's tough to say right now if it is real. I think that it's a big claim, and there's a very good chance that Auston does have it. But, I don't know, I'm kind of just upset with Simmons that he did that. I think a lot of people are on Twitter. You go on Twitter, Steve Simmons is trending number 1 right now. Like it's him and then it's Auston Matthews. It is
Yeah.
bananas on Twitter.
And also like when you look at the cases that are being reported for COVID-19 amongst athletes, you're seeing that teams are sending out reports that like a certain amount of players have tested positive. So they'll say like 3 players test positive, 3 staff members have tested positive, but they won't say the specific player. So originally, when I heard the news that right away it was like Maple Leaf star test positive, my first reaction was, okay, this is probably fake because I mean, judging by how the NHL teams have released their statements about COVID-19, um, it was just really shocking and it was hard to believe. But I mean, if he does have it, the only thing we can really say right now is we hope for the best. I hope that he has a full recovery and he gets back to Toronto.
Yeah. And I think also one of my first reactions was Frederick Anderson, because they were staying
Yeah,
together, living together in Arizona. So luckily Anderson doesn't have it. There was a report that came out that it's negative, but yet again, we're not 100% sure on that because the league's not going to say anything else. The Leafs have released a statement, actually. I can try and pull it up. But yeah, the league is not supposed to give any confirmation on if this is true or not. The Leafs have released a statement saying that they will not comment further. So we're never going to find out for sure. I don't know if Auston Matthews himself might come out and say something. I'm not sure if he's even allowed to do that. I'm sure he's been talking with the Leafs, obviously, because they know the truth. But I'm sure, Austin could comment if he wants to, but I guess we'll just wait and see what happens there. But also there's some other guys in Arizona that he was training with that also got it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those names obviously haven't been released, but apparently there are 2 or 3 more guys on the Arizona Coyotes. So, hey, Leafs fans, this guy's training with some Coyotes players. This isn't good. We might lose him in a couple of years.
And like the thing you said about Anderson, I mean, to me that was really shocking. Because I mean, when you go on Instagram and you go on Auston Matthews' page or you go on Frederick Anderson's page, all you see is them hanging out together.
Yeah.
And you'd think that like since Auston tested positive, Freddie would have tested positive too.
Exactly.
But then about like literally a few seconds after the report on Matthews came out, it was like Frederick Anderson tested negative.
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
is this really real? Like, can I really believe this?
Yeah, it's hard to believe because, I mean, this virus is so unpredictable, right? Like, you don't know if you have the virus because you're not showing any symptoms. I don't think Austin is showing any symptoms, but it's just so confusing because we don't know for sure if this is for real. Anyways, I got the Leafs statement here. I can read it. So this was retweeted by Chris Johnston, a statement from the Toronto Maple Leafs. It says, per the National Hockey League protocol, with respect to COVID-19, the Toronto Maple Leafs will not be commenting on reports surrounding testing for any of the club's players or staff. A person's medical information in this regard is private. The club will defer to the NHL's policy on handling the disclosure of positive test results, in that the league will provide updates on a regular basis with aggregate totals of the number of tests conducted and number of positive tests reported without disclosing either the identities of affected clubs or players. So there's the statement right there. And what Steve Simmons did goes completely against that. Like I said before, this is the first name that we have heard of any NHL player that has come out publicly. So I think there was another post that I saw not too long ago that I think there was 11 players in total. There was a bunch of tests done today that the NHL did on these players because, the whole return to play thing. They started phase 2. Every player has to get tested now. There was 11 players that do have it, but not one of them besides Auston Matthews' name was said, and that is completely unacceptable for Steve Simmons to do that. It goes against their privacy. It says in the statement that the person's medical information is private. So, like I said before, this news should not have been out there whatsoever. Um, yeah, I don't know. Jason mentioned earlier Ezekiel Elliott, Kevin Durant, but I guess, the NFL and NBA has different policies. Jason, any last thoughts on this? Do you think that we're going to be seeing any more information that gets come out in the next few days about Matthews?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Kevin Durant. When you look at how, his news came up, it originally started with saying that a few Brooklyn Nets players got tested positive. They didn't go straight into Kevin Durant. So, and I'm sure that followed the NBA's policy. And then, you saw after, like, in a few days' time that they announced that Kevin Durant was positive. But, in this case, like you said, Auston Matthews just, randomly out of the blue. And ultimately, obviously it goes against the league's policy. Obviously, they violated the players' rights as well as the team's rights. And, obviously it's unacceptable. So I guess we just have to wait and see what happens, whether the information is true. And if it is true, what's going to happen, if there's going to be any penalties to Simmons or the organization in general. So can't really say anything for now. We just got to wait a few days and see.
I guess we'll wait and find out what happens with that. But I mean, this story is a lot bigger than just the whole Matthews thing. Many leagues have announced their return to play plans. The NHL being one of the teams. MLB is looking at coming on an agreement, which we'll get into a little bit later. NBA as well. They have a pretty detailed plan that came out a couple of days ago as well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty concerned, though. I'm concerned because there was a lot of news that came out today about players testing positive, players getting symptoms, and we're still in those early phases of the return to play process. So I'll ask Jason this question. How concerned are you?
Well, considering all the major sports are being played in America, you have the MLB, you have the NBA, and as of right now, it looks like the NHL will be played in America. Yet we don't know yet. But speaking for kind of like what's going on in the world, when you see the amount of COVID-19 cases, America has the highest, and they also have one of the highest death rates. So going about that, I mean, we obviously know this virus is pretty deadly, and honestly, like for me, I don't feel comfortable with all things moving so quickly. It seemed like it was like with like last week ago when everything kind of was like, okay, we're gonna start this, and to me it's just like, okay, are we gonna really be moving this fast? Why don't we kind of take a step down here and kind of slow it down a little bit? Personally, I don't feel comfortable, and I'm sure a lot of players and staff don't feel comfortable as well. And hopefully everyone kind of gets an option, whether they want to go play or not. Like we're seeing in the NBA, some players are saying no, that they won't go to Orlando and play. And I think ultimately this should be a family decision and a personal decision, which I think should be enforced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty concerned. I agree with everything that you said there. It's tricky because America does have the most amount of cases, right? So that's tough. And then we're not sure whether the NHL is going to be able to play in a Canadian hub city yet. That hasn't been announced. They are really looking into it, though. I think there might be an agreement in the next day potentially about maybe a hub city in Vancouver, Toronto, or Edmonton. I still think Toronto is a very good bet. They have Sportsnet TSN, obviously. They have so many facilities that the players could use. It's just about whether the Canadian government is willing to waive what they got going on, their procedures, the whole quarantine thing. But it sounds like they're coming to some agreement. But yeah, just going back to that concerned about the league's coming back topic. I am extremely concerned. I don't see how the leagues can feel safe playing games, especially because you're in phase 2, or most leagues are in phase 2, and you hear so many reports now about players getting the virus and having symptoms. So it's really scary. And even if a league does start up, like, I don't think the chances are very high of them finishing the season or things going according to plan. I don't think there's any possibility that things will go to plan. There's going to be a bunch of hiccups along the road if they do choose to go along with starting their seasons up again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole Matthews thing is messed up, and then I
I
don't.
mean, ultimately, I think, we do have to look at, if the NHL is going to play in Toronto or in Vancouver. Um, for me, it's more reasonable to come to Canada just because Canada has dealt with the virus a little bit better than America has.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I'm sure many will argue that it's much safer to come here, but at the same time, when you have a large group of people, through, let's say for the NHL, we have 31 teams coming, not necessarily 31, just the amount of teams in the playoffs, unless they do finish the regular season,
It'll
but
be half, so it'll be
it'll be half the teams.
22 teams made the playoffs, and so
Mm-hmm.
it'll be 11 coming to Toronto, and then I'm pretty sure there might be a hub city in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think the NHL is looking at 2 hub cities in Canada, but like there's no confirmation yet.
Yeah, but I mean, even if we take that into consideration, we still have, many teams coming, and then we have to look at, where they're going to stay. And bringing that amount of people into one city, I mean, let's say Toronto, for example. Toronto's got a big population.
Oh yeah.
And then we're taking in all of these other, people from America or wherever. And, they're also endangering the lives of the public in Toronto, which I think, ultimately comes down to what the government says. But for me personally, I feel very uncomfortable. It's very, it's just not a very safe situation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think the players should have their own. They shouldn't be making their own decisions whether they want to come or not, because at the end of the day, it's about their health, right? Um, so yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next few days.
Yeah. And then I think, the NHL, they haven't really said too much detail about how many people you can bring with you. Is it just you that's going to be coming along? And
Yeah,
then, yeah,
and
no information about where they're going to be staying,
no,
because I guess just because they have to figure out the city first. And they're really just waiting on the Canadian government right now. But if it's Vegas, I know there's a little bit of a spot there where there's a bunch of hotels together, and I know Vegas has some good facilities as well. But I still think that the NHL would prefer to have um, two cities in Canada. Like you said, the cases are down here compared to the U.S. Even though some of the cases in Toronto we have been spiking in cases recently, which is a little bit concerning, but. Yeah, so I think it's just going to come down to the government, really. Also, another point is that the NHL doesn't want teams playing in their own hub cities. So if we do get a hub city in Toronto, they might not let. Well, they probably would, but they prefer not to play the Leafs in their hometown, which would be really unfortunate
yeah,
for Leafs fans or for any team. Like, you'd obviously want them to play in their home building uh, to maybe give them some sort of advantage, but I guess also just to be close to home, that could give them an advantage as well. But yeah, there's a chance that we could say we have 2 hub cities in Vancouver, Toronto. The Leafs go over to Vancouver to play, and Vancouver comes over to Toronto if the NHL chooses to do it that way.
I mean,
Yeah. Any last thoughts on this whole NHL
yeah,
deal?
regarding kind of the hub cities
Yeah.
and whether teams want to play in their hometown. Obviously, teams want to play in their hometown, but considering that fans will not be in attendance, I am 99% sure that fans won't be allowed to attend the games.
100%.
Um,
It's already confirmed. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there's not going to be fans. No way. But in
um,
the NBA though,
yeah,
in Florida, that's where they're having their Disney World Experience playoff format. Apparently,
yeah, that's definitely not safe.
That's definitely not the same. Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned about every single league at this point. I'm not sure. But
Yeah, while we're
let me
on
finish
the, all right, all right.
points. Anyways, other players like on other teams can go watch the games, so there will be fans, but they'll just be also players from other teams.
Yeah, for sure. So while we're on the topic of actually Orlando,
Yep.
what's really concerning to me is that Florida has
Yep.
been one of the most hit and one of the most, no, the most kind of the red spots, I guess, for
Oh yeah.
COVID-19. I mean, if you're looking at the past couple days, I mean, they're setting records every day.
Yeah, I mean
I mean,
Orlando and Arizona, which
yeah,
surprisingly has been in the news a lot.
it's just very it's very concerning. And then we're hearing one thing where there's a record of cases, and then on the other side of the news we're hearing, okay, all teams, let's go, pack up, let's go to Orlando. So obviously, for me, it's like it's really concerning for the players, for the staff, and for sure the families of all the players and staff. They do choose to go along, and ultimately, I mean, it comes down to the league's decision and the government or the state. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately, we don't know what's going to happen when they do go there, when they start playing, whether cases are going to spike up. Um, all I can say is we got to wait and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, just wrapping up on this whole COVID, NHL, NBA, MLB stuff that was going on, the whole Auston Matthews. Obviously, safety comes first before whether you decide an NBA champion or a Stanley Cup winner. It really just depends on the safety of the players and what's going to be right for the players and their families. It's not just all about the money. I know that's what the leagues are thinking. But safety first. You don't want this to be a massive flop. Auston Matthews, I hope you have a speedy recovery. I hope you're staying safe and you're doing well. And yeah, we're praying for you up here in Toronto, and we hope you come back healthy and on a mission if the season does return. So yeah, we're keeping you in our thoughts and prayers. Yeah, let's keep going with some NHL because there is some non-COVID related news as well. The Buffalo
Let's go on
Sabres.
to that.
The Buffalo Sabres. They made headlines this week. They fired. I think they're still firing people actually, but they fired a ton of people.
They're not done.
They're not done. They're. It's a barn fire. I don't know if that's the right term, but it's
it's a meltdown.
It's like the Leafs when they fired everyone back in 2016, I think 2015. So yeah, it's crazy over there. Yeah. Anyways, they fired their general manager. Let's talk about Buffalo. They obviously
Yeah, for
have
sure.
that stud guy Jack Eichel, number one center. In my opinion, he's a top 10 player in the league. What are your thoughts on Eichel? Because he came into the league second overall pick. He's been putting up the numbers, but there's just been absolutely no success in Buffalo since he came, or there hasn't been any success in Buffalo even before he was there, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, what
Well,
are your thoughts on Jack Eichel as a player?
I mean, we can't deny his talent, right? He's obviously, like you said, in my opinion, obviously a top 10 player in this league. He's big, he's fast. He had an NHL ready shot before he came into the league, and he's definitely a very, very elite player. And when you look at some of the other guys at Buffalo, as you got Rasmus Dahlin,
Mm-hmm.
and in my opinion, he's going to be one of the top defensemen in this league. He's got the entire skill set. And then you just go down the list. And in my opinion, Buffalo has a lot of the tools to be successful. But I think a major concern in Buffalo is their coaching and their management. I'm not too sure how they're viewing the whole process, but in my opinion, they have the talent, they have the players. It's just a matter of, can we get this to work? And it obviously doesn't seem like they're getting anything going. Especially when you got a guy like Jack Eichel who's kind of running your team,
Mm-hmm.
and it's disappointing when you got that talent but you're not getting any results. So I think Buffalo made the correct choice of firing their general manager. We don't know what other firings will occur, but ultimately, in my opinion, Buffalo needs to. They need to really wake up.
Yeah.
From a management perspective and from a player perspective. It also seems like there's a very negative vibe in the locker room,
Hmm.
and that's been going on for I don't know, for like 5-10 years now.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the management, the players, the staff, they all gotta kind of come together as one and kind of all work together. Doesn't it look like they're doing that right now? So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think, it was surprising that Buffalo took a step back this year because they did put together a pretty decent roster. Rasmus Dahlin, another year in the league, you'd think that he would be a lot better. And he was one of the best players on that team. And Eichel put up a career year as well, right? I think he got over 35 goals, almost 80 points, almost point per game. Or sorry, more than point per game.
Yeah.
Because they only played like how many did like almost 70 games. So yeah, he was over point per game. He was great. Obviously, the captain of that team, right? And then surprising players, Victor Olofsson, he was a surprise standout rookie. But then he got injured, and then you have some other guys like Kyle Okposo and Sam Reinhart as well that are still kind of trying to fit in Buffalo. I don't know if they've been impact players since joining the team. I think there's got to be a major shakeup, to be honest. I don't know if it's just the coach and management. I think, you have Eichel that you can build around, but there's not many supporting pieces. Jeff Skinner, they really messed that up because they signed him to a monster contract after he had one good year. And they bet so much on him to be that guy who would play alongside of Eichel on that wing and would put up 40 goals at a consistent pace year after year. But it's just not going to happen. And now you have that cap situation you have to worry about. You can try and ship him out, but I don't know if there's going to be another team that's willing to take on the money. So I think they really screwed themselves over in that sense because he's making 10 mil a year. Like, what?
Yeah.
And so I think that, maybe they get lucky in this draft. Maybe they get a top 3 pick potentially. And they start building a little bit of a core. But I still think Buffalo has a little bit of a ways to go here. I think they're far from competing still, despite having Jack Eichel, which is really unfortunate for him. I feel bad for the guy, to be honest.
Yeah, he's expressed his disappointment countless of times.
Yeah.
And like you said, feel terrible for him. He's a great player. Buffalo's been trying to build around him for years. They got Dahlin. So I guess you got 2 players to build around. And from a management perspective, they can't seem to get anything going. And in my opinion, obviously, there's only 2 ways to get those key players. One is through the draft, and 2 is through major trades, and 3, I guess, there's a third is free agents, if they're available.
Yeah,
and
those are tough to come across.
Yeah, and when you look at Buffalo's history, they've had continuous top draft picks, and in my opinion, the only success was Jack Eichel and Rasmus Dahlin. And when you consistently get those top picks, and you're not getting, when you're at the draft, you're getting the players that you want because you're going off your instinct, and then like a year or 2 you're in, you're like, oh, this wasn't the player that I was expecting, right? And then you end up trading him.
Alex Nylander, I guess, is an example of that. Even though he's kind of found something in Chicago, I think Chicago's really given him a chance.
Well, I think Chicago's done a really good job of doing that, especially if you look at Dylan Strome as well, and you look at what
I know, right? Yeah, Dylan Strome.
He was. I'm just gonna say this: he was awful in Arizona. He was back and forth from the NHL and the AHL, and then he went to Chicago and he was matched up with his old pal Alex DeBrincat, and I think he put up something around 70 points a year or something. I think he was just behind a point a game. And that was a career year for him. And then Chicago did the same thing with Alex Nylander. and it's just really surprising to me.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's that's the story of the Buffalo Sabres, and that's
It's
how
the continuous
they're
story.
not doing well, and the Chicago Blackhawks, they can take some players and turn them into some mediocre players and turn them into elite players in the league.
Yeah. So I actually had a question. Do you think that the Buffalo Sabres, you think it's a significant coaching problem? Because you have the talent. You had Nylander, you had Casey Middlestad, obviously Eichel Delian, you got
Yeah.
Okposo. You got these players who have decent level of talent. You can't say that they're awful players. They got some skill. You think it's a coaching problem, or do you think it's or do you think it's a management problem?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. The management kind of lucked out in some way by getting those really high picks in the previous drafts with Dahlin and Eichel, and those two guys have panned out. But I still think that they need a little bit of a supporting cast to those two guys, because I know you mentioned Okposo, Middlestat. Middlestat hasn't been much since coming into the league yet. I know they've tried him on Eichel's wing, and
Yeah.
he's not there yet. He can be there. He has the potential. We've seen it in the World Junior Championships. This guy is one of the best players on the ice, but it hasn't translated to the NHL yet. So I think he can get there, but not yet. Guy like Kyle Okposo, this guy is getting older. I don't know if he's going to be in Buffalo for too much longer. Jeff Skinner, we've seen that one great season. He's shown us glimpses. I think they just need more. I don't know if it's all the coach, because the coach can only do so much.
And then we got to go to the question of player development, maybe.
Yeah, player development. Middlestat and Nylander, right? Those are two pretty big examples. I still think they should have gave Nylander a little bit more of a shot.
Yeah.
I think Buffalo just needs to really luck out a couple more times in the draft to get some more depth in their top six, because right now their second line is not looking very good at all. I don't know what it is, but it's probably something like, I think Reinhardt's on the first line, so it's, I don't know, Kyle Okposo, Jeff Skinner, and Zemgus Girgensons or something. I don't know if that's not good. That's not good NHL quality for a second line. So I think it's a bit of both. Going back to your question, I think it's both. The management has to do a better job of player development, like you said, and finding better guys, whether that be draft, free agency, etc. Using their money a little bit more efficient. That Skinner contract is a great example. But at the end of the day, the players have to show up. I know Eichel's showing up, but I don't know. Buffalo's in a little bit of a pickle right now. Rasmus Ristolainen as well. He was saying that, well, he didn't say it, but it sounded like he wanted to get shipped out. He wanted to trade. Let's move on from Buffalo. That's a lot of Buffalo Sabres talk. Probably the most Buffalo Sabres talk I've had in my life.
Not too much positive talk, though.
I mean, it's never positive when you're talking about a Buffalo sports team. All right. Let's move on to your favorite team, Pittsburgh. A little bit of news here. Matt Murray unfollowed the Pittsburgh Penguins on Instagram. And, there is a little bit of reasoning potentially to that. They have a guy named Tristan Yari. I don't know how to pronounce the name. But he's had a pretty good year. And, they have a little bit of a fringe system going on in Pittsburgh, a little bit of a 1-2 combo. Should I read into this at all, or is this just an accident? Did he just by accident press the unfollow button?
Well, I mean, if you're going off Instagram, it could have just been a simple hack.
I guess.
And then, unfollowed the Penguins, and the media, the media does what the media does, just takes everything and puts it on all levels. So it could be something really small, or it could be something really big. I know Tristan Jarry's had an amazing year. And a lot of people started to question whether he could be the number one guy. Very similar to the Matt Murray and Fleury situation, what happened with Vegas. They ended up keeping Matt Murray, and now we have Seattle coming up. So, the Penguins do have a big decision to make who they want to secure. In my opinion, whichever goaltender they don't secure, Seattle's going to pick up. And I mean, maybe that has something to do with it, but in my opinion, I just think it's either a simple mistake, a hack, or any other million reasons. I don't think it's very significant.
Yeah. I mean, there's a chance that something could have happened. Matt Murray went back to the Penguins facility this past week. He might have been asked to come into Jim Rutherford's office at some point. Maybe something was said, but we're not going to find out. I think, in my opinion, I trust what Jim Rutherford will do, especially with their goalies, because of, like you said, the Fleury and Murray situation. They could have traded one of them before the expansion draft, but they chose to hold on to them. And look what happened. They won another Stanley Cup. So yeah. I could see that same thing happening once again. If the Penguins are in contention to win another cup and the goalies are playing well, like that's a big thing. The goalies have to be playing well. Murray and Fleury were elite goalies that year that they won. Right now, Murray is, he's not amazing. He's not that Stanley Cup quality right now. But I can see them holding on to both of them again and waiting to see what happens in the expansion. It just depends on how well Matt Murray's going to do. Let's move on to some NHL 21. There was an EA Play thing that went on, event that happened a couple days ago. But there was no word at all about this NHL 21 game, and some fans on Twitter were clowning EA for this. There's always been talk about how the EA Sports NHL games haven't been improving year after year. It's been the same game every single year. And I don't know what the reason is for that. But anyways, Jason and I, we stopped buying NHL games after 2015. I still have my Xbox 360. He has the Xbox One, but he stopped after 15. So I just want to know if there's a reason for that, or just got bored of it, or too much money.
Well, in my opinion, I had NHL 13, 14, 15. And, when I looked at 16, 17, and so on, I wasn't really seeing that much of a difference. I was like, you know what, it's the same NHL game. I'll just play 15. It's not that bad. Mm-hmm. I won't die if I don't get 16 or 17. So at the end of the day, I wasn't seeing that big of a difference in the game. So I was like, I'll just stick to NHL 15. And I have no intention of getting NHL 20 or 21 unless there's a significant change. We don't really know, because they didn't say anything about it at the EA Play. They did say that they were getting very close to releasing it, but in my opinion, it's going to look just as NHL 20, but maybe a little better graphics. Or
maybe. I don't think it's going to get released on the PS5 either, which is what people were upset about as well. And like you see everything that's happening with other sports leagues, video games. I think golf has been has improved a lot since a couple of years ago. NBA, what they're doing with 2K next year is supposed to be really good as well. Enhanced graphics. Other leagues, even like FIFA, that's been developing year after year. But the NHL franchise seems to just be, staying put. I guess we'll find out what happens there. Like I said, I don't even have a next-gen console. I still got my 360, so I can't even buy NHL 21. But, from what I'm just seeing on Twitter is that people are saying, this is the same game every single year. And I have played it. Like, if I go over to other people's houses, I've been playing 2019 as well. It just seems like the same game. I hope there are some changes. It's just the same game with roster updates. That's it. So
and on the topic of roster updates, in NHL 15, you can still customize your roster.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Right. So when you do that, and you do You change a little bit of the sound effects, you change a little bit of the screening a little bit, the viewing, I guess, because I know NHL, I think it was 18 or 19 where they had
The camera angle.
different camera angles, had like a more bird's eye view, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Right,
Yeah,
just
compared to NHL 15, just change some of the camera effects, update the rosters, and boom, you got NHL 18 right
there you
there.
go. You can even like make new teams if Seattle comes into the league. There you go. Seattle, I don't know what they're going to call them yet, but you can make new teams, create new players. There you go. NHL 15 is the new NHL 22 coming out in a couple of years.
With the lack of celebrations.
Lack of exactly right. Lack of celebrations. Let's move on to MLB. There's a bunch of drama going on. We're not going to get into all of that, but we're going to touch on it briefly here. You guys should know they haven't been coming to an agreement. There was apparently an agreement on Wednesday. John Heyman reported that that they were getting close on an agreement with prorated salaries, fully paid, around 65 to 70 games. But that agreement fell apart. So I'll ask Jason, how many games do you think should be played? I know that the MLB is kind of set on having full prorated salaries. It just seems to be coming down to the amount of games that they want to play. So what do you think is going to happen in terms of games being played next year or this year?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the MLB, they have, is it 162 games a year?
Yep.
And throughout that time, I think a big reason as to why they have that many games is, so the players have a little bit of time to get kind of into the game a little bit more, getting that feel of baseball season is back. But now with COVID-19 going on, I think, for me personally, I think there will be around 75 games being played,
Okay.
fluctuating between. And I know there have been reports that one side wants to play 60 and one side wants to play 70. In my opinion, 60 or below is far too low for the amount of games being played. And the reason why is because, it takes about 20 games for a player to actually get that feel back, right? That's in my opinion. And you see a player will be struggling continuously, but then they'll reach that about halfway point where they refresh their minds, they get into that new mentality. And that's when they start to kind of turn things around. And I think in order to do that, they need as many games as possible. And so in my opinion, I can see around 75 games being played. Obviously, we're not sure what's going to happen, but in my opinion, that should be the approximate amount of games being played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the MLBPA would also agree with you that more games are better. They want to get out there. They want to be playing baseball for as many days as possible. But I don't know if the MLB owners can do that. They're saying more. I think at one point they were saying as low as 50 games. And like my first thought when I hear that 50 games is rumored, I know that rumor's kind of gone past by now. But even 65 games, like, in my opinion, you can't award a World Series champion. Like, you will not be deserving. Okay, that's a hot take. You will not be deserving, but it's definitely going to be hard to award a World Series champion with only 60 games played without there being any asterisk. There's going to be a big asterisk on this season because you're playing less than half of what a normal MLB season is. That is ridiculous. We don't know where these guys are going to play. You might have to get them to travel. You're going to keep them in their home ballparks as well, because MLB hasn't said anything about a hub city whatsoever. So I don't even know if it's even worth it at this point. If you're playing 60 games, how in the world do you award a World Series champion? Do you kind of agree with that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I do agree with that. With such few games being played, I mean, there's only so much that you can judge on a team. For example, let's take the Dodgers, for example. They'd be hot in the beginning of the season, and that just go on for
exactly. They would win. They would
60
finally
games.
win.
Yeah, and then what ends up happening is they end up choking later in the year when it gets to that about 150 game mark. right? I
Yeah.
don't know why the players may be getting tired or something, but if you have a season where it's only like 60 to 70 games and you have a team that's hot from the start, there's a pretty good chance that this team will be good by, playoff season, or, let's say the new October. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in my opinion, I totally agree with you that I don't think, you could really award, a champion based on so little games. But at the same time, we're kind of living in a new world. So, I mean, if that's the new normal, then in my opinion, everybody has to adjust to that amount of games. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, since everyone's going to have to adjust to that, I guess everyone has like that fair outlook on it. We're all going to need to play 60 games. We're all going to need to adjust to it. So in the end, we're all equal in a way. So, um, some can view it as, you are deserving because everyone is going through the same thing, but some may view it as, this team has more of an advantage because they're usually better in the beginning of the season. But I
Yeah.
mean, it really does depend.
I think it doesn't really matter what league it is as well. I think there
Yeah.
will be an asterisk no matter what, just because people have already started to call this the COVID playoffs and not the Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs,
Yeah.
or MLB season. It's like COVID MLB COVID season.
Hmm.
So there will definitely be asterisks no matter who
Oh,
wins
and
in the end.
no doubt. Yeah.
But I think in the NHL and NBA, they're still going to be playing 7-game series. I think that team who ends up winning is definitely worthy of winning, and there really shouldn't be an asterisk on it because you would still be playing the same amount of games you would play in a regular postseason. But the MLB, like, you're not playing that. You're playing, like I said, less than half of what you would normally play, and then we don't know yet what the playoffs are going to look like. We've heard extended playoffs being thrown around, but who knows what that is yet. Um, so yeah, like I said, I just don't know if that MLB season it should be like worthy, I guess, of awarding a World Series champion. It will be hard to do that, but I guess going back to what we discussed at the beginning, it's safety first, and if this is what is safe for the players, then I guess. But straight up, my proposal, my idea about this is that the MLB should just cancel their season and wait until
Wow.
next April to start things up fresh. I think that makes the most sense to me. I don't think you should risk playing 60 games, risk the health and safety of your players, the staff, the coaches, everyone. Why not just start fresh next year when this second wave is probably going to be gone by then? I would hope maybe even a vaccine by then. You don't have to risk anything about this whole coronavirus thing, and you're clear to go. So I think that's probably
Oh,
your best bet. You've already wasted so much of the season already. I think they should just cancel it before they make things worse, because I do think that if they start up, they might run into some problems.
yeah, and when you're thinking about starting up, the season, I think you also have to look at the society as a whole. There are a lot of people out there suffering from mental health issues just because, with this kind of new reality or with self-isolation, right? And we're seeing an escalated number of people who are reporting mental health issues or anything along the lines of that. And I think a big part of sports kind of or professional sports starting up is, it gives everybody something to watch. And I think that's a big part. I'm sure it's not the driving factor, but I think it does play a big role as to why all the major leagues kind of want to start playing. They want to have and they want to keep that impact in their community and in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure if the MLB should just cancel their season. I think they should continue the season, but I think they should have very strict measures in place. Like you said, to ensure the health and safety of all the players, the staff, and their families. Because obviously that's the most important thing. But I definitely think that they should resume the season and make sure that all the appropriate precautions are taken.
Yep. I mean, that's best case scenario. That's what I hope happens. Like I said, I'm not sure, but hopefully MLB and MLBPA can figure something out, because there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans, um, MLB fans, if they do not reach an agreement, and some fans might not even forgive them for a long time for doing this. Let's move on to some Blue Jays talk. Let's move on from this COVID angle and focus on a little bit of Blue Jays news that happened a couple of weeks ago. Haven't mentioned it on this podcast yet, but the Blue Jays, they made a big splash at the draft. They added Auston Martin with the 5th overall pick. The guy was projected to go top 2, but he fell to 5. And honestly, like, he's the best player in the draft at number 5.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, obviously that's an ecstatic reaction from Blue Jays Nation right there. You get a guy who's really played everywhere on the field. His main position is shortstop, but the Jays could look at putting him at second if they want to, third base potentially, maybe even the outfield if they choose to do so. I think that's probably the biggest question regarding Auston Martin. We know he's really skilled with the bat. He can play solid defense. He's a impact player right away. But where does he fit in? Where does he fit on the field defensively? So I guess I'll ask Jason what his opinion is on that. Yeah, where do you think he fits in on defense?
Yeah, I mean, when you draft a guy like Austin Martin, who's, a very versatile player, he can play all around the field. Um, he was listed as a shortstop, and in my opinion, I think he would be best at shortstop or in center field. The reason I say center field is because it gives him the ability to kind of be very open, and it allows him to learn as well. And I know he's had experience in center field, maybe not that much experience, but judging by who the Blue Jays have in the infield, they have Vladdy, they have Biggio, they have Bichette, and they have that talent up in the infield. So I think it would really help the Blue Jays as a team to have some talent in the outfield as well. I know they have a lot of questions regarding center field. So in my opinion, I mean, it obviously depends on the approach that the Blue Jays are going to take, and how they make their roster, I guess. So ultimately, I see him placing in either shortstop or center field.
Interesting. Center field's an interesting take, but yeah, I agree. Like, they need some serious help in the outfield. Randall Grichuk, like, I don't think he's going to cut it. I know he's got some pop, but I'd rather him hit for average, and I know Auston Martin should be able to do that. He's more of an all-around player. He can run as well. This guy can steal bases, hits for average, gets a lot of hits, and he can also hit the long ball as well. Yeah, I think center field would be a transition. I know he has some experience playing there, but to play it at a major league level is a lot harder to do. But that's a really good point you had there. I think there's always a chance that they trade someone from that infield. Maybe a guy like Cavan Biggio is kind of what I've been thinking, just because Cavan did show. He did strike out a lot in the short time that we saw him last year. He did have some pop, but yet again, it's just that average. And I think the Jays need more guys who will get on base and will get more hits and strike out less. I think that's what any MLB team wants. But the Jays have a lot of those guys who will swing for the fences, and that's it. They're not going to hit for those singles. They're not going to hit to get on base. I know Biggio takes a lot of walks. He has a good eye, but I'd like to see a little bit more hits from him. Hopefully, we see some improvement if the season does resume this year. Let's look at their rotation. Jason's a big fan of, do I even know how to pronounce this guy's name? Hyunjin Ryu. Is that right? Hyunjin Ryu?
Yeah.
There you go. Amazing. So yeah, they acquired him obviously in the offseason. That was a big add to the Jays rotation. Ryu had a phenomenal season with the Dodgers last year, Cy Young candidate. So how good do you think Ryu would have to be if the Jays wanted to make a run in the playoffs this year.
Well, you look at what Ryu did with the Dodgers last year. I mean, he had a 2.98 ERA, was second in Cy Young voting, and you look at his walk ratio as well. I mean, he's been amazing with the Dodgers last year, and I think a big thing for Ryu is going to be that transition going from the NL to the AL, right? The AL has a lot of powerful hitters. You can just look at the Yankees roster. And all these guys that he's gonna have to go up against. And you see when he was with the Dodgers, he went up against the Yankees a few times and got absolutely killed. So we don't know how he's gonna do in the AL. But in terms of how well does he have to do for the Blue Jays to be in contention?
Yeah, I think from what I meant by that question, in terms of ERA, how low does that ERA have to be, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think it should be around 3.5 in
3.5
order for the Blue Jays to have any chance.
Really? Okay. I think that's high.
The playoffs.
I think that's pretty high, actually.
And the reason that I say 3.5 is because, when we're judging Rio based on his past 2 years, his past 2 years with the Dodgers have been incredible. And if you look at his stats, he had a 1.9 something ERA in 2018, I believe, and then he posted a 2.98 the following year, but that was in the NL. Making that transition to the AL, if you look at some of his stats when he played up against the AL teams, his ERA was somewhere in the high 3, high 4. So ultimately, the realistic ERA for me would be around 3.5. But in terms of what his ERA has to be in order for the Blue Jays, to be in contention, again, I say it's 3.5. If he's lucky, it'll be around maybe 3.1, 3.2 if he's lucky. But I mean, ultimately, it also does depend on how Tanner Roark does, Chase Anderson does, Matt Shoemaker, and all the other guys in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the part where it's a lot harder transitioning from the NL to the AL, and obviously the division is going to be a lot harder. And going up against teams like the Yankees, Red Sox, etc., it will be a transition for Ryu, and I think the ERA will be higher, but I disagree with the fact that it will be 3.5 and they'll make the playoffs. I think if they want to have any shot at making the playoffs, this guy has to have an ERA below 3. I think he has to have a better season than he did last year, because I still think the Jays are, a couple years away. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, right away. I know they have a good young core, etc., a decent rotation, but I think if the Jays want to have any shot at making the playoffs, Ryu will have to carry them. He has to get an ERA below 3. But he might get some help. Nate Pearson. He is a guy that has been talked about a lot in Toronto baseball throughout the past couple of years. He's been playing in the minor leagues, but he might get the call up. There is no minor leagues in baseball due to COVID-19. So if the season does resume, does Nate Pearson get the call up?
Well, in my opinion, I think he will crack the roster. I mean, obviously, he's a very, very good young pitcher. And, with all the circumstances in place, I definitely think that he's deserving of a roster spot, just because his potential and even his ability right now. You have all these veterans like Ryu, you have Shoemaker, you have Anderson, and you have Roark, and I definitely think it'll benefit Nate Pearson as well, just to be able to learn and watch these guys on a daily basis. And I think that'll be a big reason as to why he also does crack the roster. But I definitely do think he will get a few starts, maybe, depending on how the Blue Jays take his development. But in terms of your question, I do think he will start the season with the Jays.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, especially since there is no minor leagues, they want to get him as many reps as possible. And if that means putting him into a big league clubhouse right away, they're going to do it. The more experience, the better for him. I don't know if he's going to start off right away in that starting rotation. Maybe you start him off like how they did Aaron Sanchez, put him in the bullpen, use him as a setup guy, maybe closer as well, put him in some big moments, and then ultimately transition him to a starting role, because he's going to be, probably their ace. Even if Ryu's still there, Pearson might be their ace in the future. So yeah, that's it for some MLB talk. That was some good Jays talk there. Let's transition over to a little bit of entertainment. We haven't really touched on that too much
Let's get
on
some
this.
positive vibes going.
Yeah, exactly. I guess this is pretty positive vibes. We're talking about America's Got Talent today. That's a show that I haven't been watching too much of this year, but I have in the past, and it's a phenomenal show. It's one of the best shows on television, by far the best talent show in the world. Jason's been watching a lot of it so far this season, so hopefully he has some insight as to what to look out for. So I have heard about this girl who's really talented. She's from Toronto, Golden Buzzer winner. So I guess touch on her and what other acts stand out to you so far this year.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, we're gonna start off with the 10-year-old girl who's from Brampton, I believe. Um, and I mean, if you watch her, she was amazing. She's 10 years old. She's got the voice of about a 25-year-old. And she was just phenomenal. Her whole audition. I mean, the minute she started singing, I kind of knew that she was gonna get the Golden Buzzer. She also made the big travel from Canada to America. And to
Yeah.
display what she did in the audition, I think she was very deserving of that. In terms of other auditions, I mean, there's a lot of talented people this year. Um, one person I will point out is a man named Archie Williams. He, sorry, I'm going towards the negative side a little bit here, but he was wrongly incarcerated for 37 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. And that was a story that really hit me a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And if we're looking at the recent events that occurred, I think it's really important to emphasize our justice system and how we want it to be going forward. And his story was just so powerful. And if you listen to him, he sung a song, and it really kind of related to who he was as a person and the things that he went through. I mean, being in prison for a crime he didn't commit. I mean, it's awful. I mean, there's a big sense of guilt, and it's just an awful feeling. And I think that was a big person to look up for. Just his story, his background, the things that he went through, and to have that level of confidence to get up on that stage in front of all of America, in front of all the world, and sing like the way he did was just very powerful. Other acts that I found were very amazing was this guy named Ryan Tricks. He is a drummer, I guess. He's a freestyle drummer who also dances while he drums. So he displayed like a set of drums. He had I think it was like 7 or 10 drums, and he was kind of like doing a moonwalk as he was like hitting the drums. And I was just like, wow. Like for me, like I think like I couldn't even hit the first drum and dance at the same time. So
Yeah.
I mean, like he was obviously amazing. And then my favorite act so far was a group called Waffle. They
Okay.
are a dance
They
group.
just got the Golden Buzzer,
They
right?
just got the Golden Buzzer,
Okay.
and they got the Golden Buzzer from Simon Cowell. And I mean, if any of you guys want to go watch them, just search up Waffle AGT. These guys are amazing. I mean, they have the skill, they have the passion, they're very energetic, and in my opinion, they want it more than anyone.
Yeah.
They're definitely a group to look out for. They're probably one of the most talented dance groups that I've seen all throughout the 15 seasons of AGT. So they're definitely a group to look out for. They could win it all,
Yeah. Mhm.
but you never know. I mean, as a
That
Canadian, I hope the girl wins it. But
Yeah, me too, right? I think all of Canada is rooting for her. Yeah, going back to that dance group, I did catch that performance. That was insane. That's
yeah,
always, a huge compliment, getting a compliment from Simon Cowell, just any compliment, but getting the
yeah,
golden buzzer, that says a lot. I think they're very good dance crew, and they do have a good shot of winning, like you said. The Unbeatable, that was another group that I wanted to mention from last year or from a couple
They
years
were
ago.
amazing. Yeah.
They won AGT champions, right?
Yes, they
Last
did.
year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the landmark that these guys have to live up to. It's going to be
Yeah.
tough because they were really good. I'm going to ask you this question, kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit. It might be an easy answer. You never know. What's your favorite AGT act of all time? If you got to think, I can say what I want to say.
Yeah, I'll let you go first. I mean, I'm juggling between three right now. I just don't know which one to say. Yeah, I'll let you go first and I'll pick one.
Okay. Mine is I forget what season it is, but it's the I think it's the Taylor Williamson season. That was when Heidi, Melby, I think Howard was still a judge. Howard Stern was still a
Yeah,
judge. The winner of that year, Kenichi Ibina. I don't know if you remember him, but yeah, he was phenomenal. He's like a dancer slash entertainer. He puts like graphics on the screen. He like does some like visual effects stuff. It's a full Vegas caliber show that he put on. Yeah, like I remember that first audition. Just go watch it. Like it's too, I can't even explain it. Like what he does is just too insane.
yeah.
I could never do that. But yeah, he was probably my favorite act of all time. I would go see him perform live one day if I could, and this virus thing ends. What about you? Have you thought at all about? I mean, there's got to be a couple, right? Like even for me, like there's so
Yeah.
many amazing stories and acts on AGT.
Mhm.
And it's a family show too, right? That's why I love it so much. Like you can just
Mhm.
watch it with your family.
Yeah, so there's three.
Okay.
I'll say all three just because I'm
Yeah.
having trouble picking one. So one of them, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard who she is. Her name is Grace Vanderwall.
Okay.
Her original audition, she sang an original song, and she has a very gifted voice.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell right away. She has a certain type of voice that I've just never heard before. And the minute she started singing, it was like, wow, like I think she was like 11 years old too or something when she did her first audition. She ended up winning the whole thing, and from what I'm hearing, she has had an amazing career so far, and she's like 15 years old. And it was just her originality. It was her voice. It was really everything. I mean, she was amazing. If you want to search her up, I mean, she was absolutely incredible. Her first audition, all throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
My second act, this was the season 13 winner. His name is Shin Lim.
Yeah.
He is a magician. He won AGT season 13, and he won the first season of AGT Champions.
Right. Yeah.
He is a sleight of hand magician, and I mean, if you watch him, like honestly, like you'll go to bed just thinking like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
And I remember his final move. It was like a poker thing. He like got one person to like pick a card, and then like they did like all this like poker stuff, like normal poker stuff, and then at the end each person at the table had the same, well, I guess, well, the card was a jack, and they all had jacks at the end. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay. um, yeah, so he was amazing. And then the last person, this was the most recent winner. His name is Cody Lee. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but one of the reasons that I think he's so good is his story. Um, he has autism. He is also blind, and he has an amazing voice, and he communicates his emotions and the things that he wants to say through music. And I think that was just really powerful, and definitely one of the most memorable acts of AGT. So those are my top three. I'm sure there's many more, but
Yeah.
those are the three that I'm going with right now. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know this waffle group. I mean, they're amazing. I don't know what they're gonna do the next time, but I mean, very excited to see. Maybe they'll crack my list.
Yeah. They got to crack Jason's top three. next time around. Yeah, those are great choices. All three winners, right? Grace
Yeah,
Vanderwall,
all
Shin
three
Lim,
winners.
Cody Lee. Yeah, Shin Lim as well, right? He won back to back. He won like 2 in a row. Came
Yeah,
up, won the first, like the original AGT, and then came back with all the champions and won the champions.
yeah, and
So
also like, what was really impressive about that was Champions was actually like, from my understanding, it was like right after his season ended.
yeah, it
So
was.
he actually
Yep,
had the guts to go back and compete with all these other winners when he could have just like kept his pride and kept his glory from winning, season 13, and then went on to do a show in Vegas. But he
that's
chose to like,
confidence. That is
yeah, he
confidence
chose
right
to
there.
come back, and I was like, what's gonna happen if he loses? Is like he's gonna lose his reputation?
Yeah.
Um, but he ended up winning it, and it paid off
I mean,
greatly.
honestly, like as soon as I found out that he was in champions, like I knew he was gonna win. Like this guy was
Yeah,
unstoppable in the regular AGT, and then like even if you put him up against the best of the best, I know like he would still blow everyone out of the water because his tricks were great week after week, his presentation, etc. Yeah, and the fans loved him. He has a huge following on social media as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, shout out to Shin Lim, and Grace and Cody Lee and Kenichi Ibina, all great acts from AGT. And I think also what's going to be interesting to see with this season is how they're going to do the live shows because I don't know if you guys are watching American Idol at all, but they actually had to do their live performances from their houses. So that takes a little bit away from the whole aspect of being on stage and how these guys are going to do, when they do make it to the industry and have to perform in front of large audiences. It's definitely going to be weird, I guess, to see some of these acts like that Waffle Group if they have to do anything at home. Like, I don't know how some of these acts are going to be
Yeah,
able to manage that, but
yeah. I know they pre-recorded like up to a certain point. I think it
yeah.
was like up to like judge cuts or something. But
Hmm.
I mean, I have no idea what they're gonna do.
Is it before judge cuts or after judge cuts?
I'm not too sure. I
I
mean, I
think
know
it's got to be after. I think it should be
after judge
after.
cuts. I know they definitely still have the semifinal and finals to go.
Yeah.
But like when you think about it, a big kind of thing about America's Got Talent is the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And the reaction of the crowd. I think that is a major factor in kind of the voting.
Mhm.
Um, and if these contestants were to you know do their performances without the crowd, I guess in my opinion, I think it'd be really biased. And like you said, if we're going back to sports, there's going to be like a major asterisk here.
Yo,
Um,
yeah, I know,
you know,
right?
if, we're gonna have like they didn't deserve to win it. Like in my like if this person did this, like there would have been a much bigger crowd reaction.
Well, hey, I know what you're thinking. There's not going to be any fans. There won't be
Yeah,
any
it's
audience.
gonna be no one. So
There's going to be no one. Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, also the contestants they don't know how they did. The only thing they can really
I
trust
guess
is
so. Yeah,
the judges, sayings. But at the end of the day, it's the fans that vote, right? It's the
I
fans that vote the
guess.
winner. So I think there's going to be a lot of bias in that too. But I could be
Well,
wrong.
if I'm being completely honest, I think, like from in the past AGT seasons, there hasn't been an act where the crowd hasn't applauded or anything like that. I think
Yeah,
for every act, they're going to get on their feet, give their
yeah,
standing or whatever. But I do agree, like, it does take away a big aspect of what AGT is as a show. But
yeah,
I think they could make it work. I could see, a scenario where they do go to a location and I don't know if it's going to be like the Dolby Theater, but maybe a big theater like that, and they do put on their performances in front of just the judges,
hmm
and air that live. That would be cool to see. And still, you'd have the fans being able to vote and stuff. But
yeah.
I guess we'll see, what happens with AGT. Hopefully I can start watching some of that. I don't know why I haven't really been watching it because I'm normally watching it. I'm normally like really invested into it at this point, but I
You
don't
gotta
know.
watch the Waffle Group, and
I've seen that one. I've seen
they're
that
so
one,
good.
but yeah,
Can't wait to see what they do next. I'm actually like, I don't know what they're gonna do acts. Like a big question is, how do you top the performance they just did?
That's the big question with all of these acts, right? They got to top their auditions.
Yeah, and they also got the golden buzzer, so I think they have like another week to prepare compared
They
to
got so much time to prepare.
compared to the people they got to do, or they got to go through the judge cuts. So it's like now you have this extra pressure on you, and if you don't perform, then
Yeah.
that first audition kind of goes down the drain in a way.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's what the competition's for, right? You got to step it up. So yeah, that's AGT for you. Check it out. Yeah, that's really it for the show. I don't really know what much else to touch on. I think we'll wrap it up with that, a little bit of a fun ending to the show. I know we'll probably touch on it, later on in episodes, see how the season unfolds. But yeah, that's that. Jason, I want to. Sorry, say it again.
If it even unfolds.
Exactly. I know, right?
Even continue. We don't even know if they're gonna continue.
I think they'll find a way. Yeah. Anyways, Jason, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Anything else you want to mention? Shout out before leaving here.
Yeah, just everybody stay safe, stay healthy, practice social distancing, and just try and keep yourself entertained through these very difficult times.
All right. There you have it. Jason Lee with some wise words. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for listening to episode number 4 of the Unlimited podcast with Aiden Silliphant. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, a bunch of other platforms. All that stuff's going to be in the description below. And we'll be back with another episode next week. And yeah, that's it. And peace.